So, welcome, Thomas. Welcome again for this special event, special podcast. We have been doing this for a long time. How are you today?
I'm great, Dharam. So I'm sitting here in Germany, and yesterday was a beautiful day. Today it's raining, so it's very perfect to do some webinars during the rain inside the house.
Exactly. And I'm sitting in Sydney, and yeah, it's raining as well here. But now it's better. It's good weather today. Not too hot. Not too hot.
Good. That's good. That's good. Well, it's warming up here in Germany. We had about 10 degrees Celsius, and that's okay. So the first blossoms are coming up. So looking forward to springtime, and also the days get longer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's possible in Sydney, but in the evenings here in Germany, when we look at the moon, and the moon is only visible so much, you also can see two very bright dots just adjacent to the moon, and that's, as I learned, is a Jupiter and it's Neptune.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's very and Venus. Neptune is also there. There are three of the planets visible in the same section. It's in the
Oh,
evening in Germany. I don't know if you can see it from at the same time in other regions. Might be different.
yeah. I will keep an eye on the sky. All right. Welcome. So let's talk about today's topic. So we are talking about sustainability. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So project management in sustainability, how to ensure that whatever we're delivering is, in aligned with current climatic challenges, and how to ensure that we have longer, better life for everyone for going forward.
Yeah.
So my first question to discuss is, and it's a little longer, I have to read it. How do digitalization, mass customization, localization, populism, and industry disruption, which have reached a tipping point in today's VUCA world, offer the opportunity to build sustainability project?
Yeah. Well, all these things that you mentioned, and some perceive as a VUCA world, which now comes to a culmination in our times, which I don't believe, but that's a separate topic. So it gives us the idea to develop mindsets, and sustainability is a kind of mindset. If I look long term, if I look in cyclical times, so I know things come back again, so I better prepare for that, and
Yep.
I don't waste the plastic in the ocean and all this stuff because it comes back, and so to develop this mindset, and it's a perspective on the world, a long-term perspective. You also have short-term perspective. So if you are in immediate danger, you won't waste so much thinking about what's happening in 2 years. You are just trying to survive and to react on an outside side trigger. So that's the long-term thing. And it also depends on the situation. So the problem with sustainability is we are trying to establish some regulations, some laws, some morality around sustainability. Uh, and the assumption is, if we have a concept how to do it, a process or whatever, then it can be replicated. You can do the same thing again and again, and then everything will become more sustainable. But I don't think that's really true because, as you know from projects, it's very situational. The specific context at the time in the social environment you are in is changing and might require different acts to be sustainable. So sustainable is a mindset, but it's also a target. It's not in the process itself. So changing times can open up for renewing old mindsets or established mindsets, as they should. And this uh, hype curve from Kubler-Ross, if you have a disruption, check, then you first have a shock, you are surprised, and then you have denial, and after that you may go through such a curve and be more responsive and accept it and even leverage it. And I think this is happening to many people. If they have this shock, then they think about sustainability. How can I avoid this kind of disruption, or mitigate it and be more resilient as a person? But also, and the shock and the denial is a sign of that the old mindsets defend themselves. They try to be in place, and then you see we have this wars and widening gaps and migration and pollution and populism and everything you mentioned in your question. So yeah, I think these shocks provide the opportunity to build sustainability in everything, in projects, for sure, which means that these projects establish targets and goals and maybe sidelines to everything what they do should be sustainable, so that the products become more sustainable as they are today. And this means that you widen the scope and include sustainability as one of the criteria. Could be a quality criteria in old thinking, but I think it should be a guardrail that we use in every project. Or organizations could be sustainable in society. And if you think about that, uh, sustainability should be something to discuss in a very wide mindset type of environment. If you just narrow it down to, let's say, we have a cyclical economy, we have recycling of waste and so on, I think that's too narrow. It's not really getting to the point of a way of thinking.
Exactly. And yeah, so while all these things going on, as a project manager, we need to be, covering or catering, anything which is impacting us now in the future.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So my next question is, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I already talked, what is sustainable, the individuals, products, projects, organizations, society, even humanity, you could say, is it sustainable or not? Do we survive as humanity, and what do we need to do that? It's also a mindset thing. And I think then the mindset of sustainability is a positive thing, because it makes us think about the future and how can we improve it. That's not these short things. As an individual, it's very important, am I sustainable means, do I survive future shocks and disruptions? How good am I, and am I resilient? And sustainability is also enforced if you have a capability which is taught, but also is maybe something you can learn. It's willpower. Do I have the willpower to avoid instant gratifications, and go for the long term, and have the long term in mind? And that's a human capability to think about the future. No other species can do that. Maybe a dog awaits a food, a treat, yeah, but that's not really thinking about the future, what will happen. So planning to do something, and it needs willpower to be sustainable. So work on your willpower. There are exercises, and I think then you can become sustainable for your individual being, resilient, and you preserve the positive things and think long term, and you live longer. And we all live longer in the Western world, at least. We have a lot of people in Germany now who are over 100 years old. And so medicine is making progress, and a lot of influences there, but the individual also has to have the willpower, for instance, to lose weight, to do the daily exercise, and with yoga, and to have this mental exercises. So this is the willpower you need to be sustainable as an individual.
Yeah. I mean, you got a very good point about willpower, which not many people think from that point of view. So having a sustainable or a good mindset can help you to survive a lot of crises and make your projects even more sustainable.
And as I said, willpower, you know, if you don't teach it, if you don't learn it, then will have less of it. But if you understand that willpower is a good thing to have for, let's say, for your kids, if you are a parent, then you can try to convey the value of willpower. I don't say force your kids into something, but teach them about willpower, and it could be like that you don't give them instant gratification, because as a toddler they may cry out loud because they are hungry, and that's okay, and you immediately give them something in the mouth so they are quiet. That's your instant gratification, and although theirs. So why not wait for a minute, and make sure that they can achieve their targets, maybe a little bit delayed, but also ready in time to survive.
Exactly. So if you keep giving what they're asking for, then when the crisis comes, they don't know how to act. They just
exactly.
Why it's me? All right. Good. Very nice discussion. So my next question is: do organizations care about risk mitigation strategies as we move to the next crisis, which is no longer a question if, but is about when?
Yeah. So this is the topic of the risks with a big impact, but maybe a low probability. Okay, there will be coming something. Do I prepare myself for that? And they are also called gray swans. If we
Black
know this
swans.
will come, but like the earthquake in California, everybody knows, everybody's told it will come, it will be very heavy. And what are you doing? You are building a card house in Los Angeles or whatever, so because you don't care. But that's not sustainable, by the way. That's a typical example. So how do you prepare your own sustainability and of your community to be able to survive such a gray swan if it comes? And gray swans are things we know. And we have the white swans, where we maybe are like the snake, and we are no, the rabbit seeing a snake, it's just freezing. We know it comes, it comes our direction, and we don't do nothing about it. These are the white swans, and reading about these swans is a good thing, and then making yourself comfortable with the concept. So we talk a lot about it, but we don't do anything. So what about organizations? So if I look at organizations, and the most organizations I have seen here in Germany, we have about 90% of organizations are small, medium business. And they didn't prepare for the COVID, really, and they didn't prepare for the war we have now. So they are just weathering it out, but they have an advantage because they are small. They are more adaptable to changes. If you are a big battleship or a big tanker, like the big corporations, even some Germans like Volkswagen or BASF or you have Apple, or you have these are the big tankers. It's very hard to shift them around if something happens. But if you have small organizations, maybe only 200 people, it's maybe like a startup. You can listen to the environment and change. But the problem is with, to be honest, in my view, is what is the purpose of an organization? And if you look at the purpose statements, it doesn't tell you the truth. Law tells you the truth, and the purpose of organizations is to have growth and profit. That's
exactly. I mean, immediate. Give me, what is the more focus on now? Okay, how can I have more margin? How can I? So the problem with that attitude is they sometimes take shortcuts. Right. Shortcut can be impacting the environment, impacting the future generations because of your shortcuts. You made money, and actually you end up paying more money because, you know, if the crisis happen, then you don't know, you know, you have to pay for that in a way.
So
And
there's almost no organizations I know of here who have a explicit target of being sustainable as an organization, you know, to survive the next 100 years. There are some companies who are more than 100 years old and in the stock market, so like IBM, like Panasonic, like other big companies, Exxon, who have been there for more than 100 years. But the average lifetime of companies on the stock market is decreasing since 2 or 3 decades. So in average, organizations become less sustainable as organizations. And so how can we build in some sustainability in organizational targets, in organizational purposes, you know? And it's being done through laws. So sometimes governments say, okay, we establish some laws that you have to look at the future and so on, you know. And actually that even with company laws, that finance has to be sustainable. You have to look at your balance sheets and see what kind of assets you have, and then, you know, the stock market itself will judge you if you are sustainable or not. And second thing is regulation. So that's what we see with all these sustainability targets in terms of society and in environmental sustainability, you know. So regulations make companies act in a certain way, you know. Don't put the waste in the rivers. Establish very good rail infrastructure so that rail that trains don't uh, derail and spill their chemicals, you know, what we saw in Ohio recently. These are regulations, you know, and if you break them, okay, there might be some damage to it. Even laws are broken, you know, and people accept the risks of paying fees or doing something. Maybe not the risk to go to jail, but even that is happening, you know. How many CEOs are having lawsuits and at risk to jail. And the third level, you know, after laws, after regulation, it's morals. When the society says, okay, we expect you as an organization to do so and so, behave like this and that, and it always starts with morals. So society decides, okay, we don't want to have waste in the oceans, and then, you know, there is a big public discussion on it, and it might move into regulations and eventually into laws, and that's how it happens. But these are guardrails for economy, the guardrails for organizations. These are not the core purpose. The core purpose still is, I want to survive, and so I have to grow, and I want to have profits, so my shareholders have a gain from the investment. No, that's how our economy works, and it's even true for this growth mindset. You know, it's even true for other organizations, for NGOs. So they want to have more members, more volunteers, whatever, so that are working there. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but, you know, I tried to elaborate on organizations and their risks and what do they think about sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, as a project manager or organization, what can we do? You know, we need to see what happened in past. We have seen that, you know, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a COVID or anything. If this happen again, are we ready? I mean, organization can handle by having disaster recovery, you know, having a similar setup in other safer environment. In case we have disaster, at least we have cover. We can take care, or that's a disaster recovery. The COVID-like situation happen. Are we ready for that? Yes, okay, we will have a process around that. We may not have everything, but if how to deal with this, we have a process. And if this happen, trigger this, and let people work from home. Let them get a laptop or something, or maybe any machine. You know, of course, you need to cover your you know, vulnerability as well.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. My next question is, where do the project managers perception of climate change is difficult to understand as major world event, fast track failure of the global supply chain.
The question combines, the effects on the supply chain, global supply chain, with the
Yeah.
climate change outcomes. We see flooding, we see, and it's in my view, it's not only climate change. Certainly, climate change will impact the pathways we are transporting our goods, but there's also a supply chain in informational goods, where you don't need a ship to put it somewhere. But although there we have disruptions, because now we have the sanctions, against Russia and other countries. So it's not allowed to exchange information or people or money with them. So there are a lot of different supply chains we have to consider, and there are a lot of disruptions to them. So what is the project manager's role in that? Well, it's very, very limited, because neither does a project manager have any influence in geopolitical developments like sanctions or wars or so, nor even does he have maybe a supply chain influence, on the supply chain, because that's normally done by the appropriate functions within the company, procurement, and might have a supply chain organization. So the project manager himself is or herself, they are more customers of these functions, and they need some resources at some time. They specify it. They have a contract maybe, and then they wait the stuff comes in. If there's a global supply chain interruption, they better have built some resilience into their project by maybe having multiple suppliers and multiple resources pools to get the stuff from. Because the question goes about the climate change, I said there are a lot of disruptions in these supply chains. On climate change will more or less, affect the project managers in the term that, do I have physical supply chains? Then maybe some harbors won't function in 50 years because the sea level raises, so new harbors have to be established, and they are. Maybe we have other means of land transportation like railroads, but then you have to have the infrastructure. You have to build the railways, and maybe through different time zones. So now, if you look at Russia, the largest country in the world, and they certainly have some railways, but they also have this frozen soil, which is now warming up, and vast sorry and vast yeah, thank you, vast territories are morphing into swamps, so we already have seen that factories and the cities in Russia are sinking into the soil because the soil is warming up and fluidifying. So that's certainly something. If you have a project there, you have to consider what to do with that, and although if you look at now, you're in Australia and you had some heat waves and burning and so is it sustainable to have teams and people living and working in Sydney, let's say, in the future, if you have an average temperature of, let's say, 45 degrees Celsius in summertime? People only can stay inside, and maybe the families have a hardship to live there. So that's things that a project manager can react to by having redundancies, by having multiple suppliers and options, and preparing for those risks. But if I'm a project manager and somebody tells me you have the risk of a breakdown of the global supply chain, well, I rather shrug my shoulders, because that's a very wide boundary. So I have to look at my scope and my resourcing and my interfaces to the outer world and make them handleable and makes him closer to my core task, and then I can establish some resilience.
Yeah, as a project manager, yes, you don't have a control on all the things going around you, but what you can do, you can identify this as okay, potential risk. What can be the mitigation? You may have identified a mitigation. Okay, we cannot get supply from, let's say, from Taiwan or Malaysia. What do? We need to buy it from locally, and yes,
Yeah.
it's going to be higher costly. So higher cost means we need to make sure the client is aware of this high cost, potential high cost. Yes, it may means your margins may be down, but that's what you can do. Being upfront as a project manager, identify the risk, and have some mitigations and advise your stakeholders that this is a potential risk, and we have seen the impact, and if this happens, we will be ready, or this is our mitigation, or if you have nothing else, we have to accept as it is.
Yeah. Give you an example of one of my projects. When we had a European rollout of SAP for a company, and we had a total team of 120, 140 people, depending on which country we're in. But there was a core team of about 50, 60 people, and instead of letting them work from home, which we could, or from different locations, we rented a house where they could fit in, and they could work, so that we have a close sitting together, and they could discuss easily, and there was an opportunity to bring them together. So this is removing a lot of risks of this supply chain. Yeah. If they work from home, do they have access? Are there other disruptions? So if they are together in one house, in one location, this is a risk mitigation, a sustainable thing. It costs a little bit more money, but you don't know how many problems would arise, which you also have to fund and to finance if you want to mitigate them. And the second thing is, if you look at your project team and maybe you have some very critical skills, you need to do one thing. And I had one guy who was the top specialist, about a certain topic, but he was a very difficult person to deal with, and the customer didn't like him, and the team didn't like him. So now what do you do if he would not be a singular person with a singular skill? Then you would maybe talk with him and let him go, but it was hard. Though we eventually let him go, but only after we have ensured that we have a maybe not the same level of skills, but sufficient skills to replace him. And not only one guy, but hopefully two guys. And that's what we did. It's a time of what a project manager can do. How do you design your team? How do you identify bottleneck resources? And how do you make sure that they don't hamper with your schedule?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for your kind discussion. All right. My next question is, how does outsourcing production operations to countries with cheaper labor affect project sustainability?
I've worked intensively with outsourcing production. That means creating project products, but also operations, so ongoing operations. They are quite different. So why are we doing that? And it's the primary reason is that the cost per hour is cheaper, and some say, okay, maybe some of the key resources only are available in this outsourcing country, which might be true, because India is very famous for that, and India has 1.4 billion people and certainly a lot of skills, where you can find more people having a big skill. On the other hand, if you go to the Western countries, maybe you have people who are in the business for 20, 30 years, and you have to see what you need, So the cost per hour is mostly confirmed in these outsourcing decisions, but What is sometimes forgotten is the additional cost that is needed to enable communication, to make sure the attrition in the teams in other countries is being taken care of. The point is that you have less control about what they do. You know, they are remote, so you have go in, and you also often, you know, because of the worse working conditions like unions or whatever, you know, and you have also less sustainability in the capabilities of the outsourced team. So outsourcing is good if you have a minimum, let's say 80, 100 people who are doing the same thing, and then you are not so much dependable on individuals. And if you have a strong management team, and if you really enable great communication, so maybe you have to fund for a video room, you know, and and do all this stuff that's not easily available in these countries from the outset. So that's what we did. And if you go down to that, you know, maybe you decide, okay, it's maybe not only the cost per hour, which is the argument to look at.
Yeah. So we need to consider many other factors, you know, not just cost per hour, but also living condition and working conditions and sustainability. You know, people working for, you know, at the $2 per hour kind of thing, which is crazy. You know, they just have to work because they have no other option, and that's the
Right.
exploitation happening.
And that's, you know, in our view, that's not a good motivation to work. If you have to work for 2 hours a day or whatever, then you know, you are not happy to work. You're not engaged because you're still scratching on the surface of what is needed to feed your family and to survive in your environment. No. The better thing is to make you safe, give you a safe environment physiologically.
Yeah.
We discuss about physiological safety in a team, and that's important. People should know they come here and they are safe and they can be creative and engage and fully invest their time into the task. And so if you just look at the cost per hour and squeeze the people in other countries, then you will not probably succeed. And it's not sustainable anyhow, because these people will avoid working for such a company from such a country again.
Exactly. I mean, that's where many countries are, you know, there's exploitation happening, whether it's, you know, without naming, there are many countries which poor working conditions and, you know, extra hours, long hours, you know, there's stress is going on. There are a lot of, you know, disease, body, mental problems are going on because of all these things.
Correct. And don't forget, you know, in most of these countries, the concept of family is much more important than in Western states, where we have a lot of people, singles living in one flat, you know, alone for themselves, and they might see the family once a year in Christmas time. We have that, but in these countries, the family is much more important for your ego, but also for your survival, and, you know, support each other. So community and family is much more important, and yeah, not only important. It's relevant for your survival, your personal survival.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that you should stop outsourcing. It just making sure wherever you outsource, the working conditions are, you know, has to be there, and hours and all the, you know, all the well-being has been taken care, so that, you know, yes, you save money. At the same time, they get a job, and they get some money for their family, which is also important. So yes, your job is to make sure you're outsourcing, right? But have you done all these things? Have you make sure you have audits happening? You have regular visits happening to find out what's happening in those countries. If something not working out, let them know. Hey, this clause you're not following. We might terminate the contract or something.
And there are a lot of companies who know that and have adapted over the years with the experience in outsourcing. So I know of companies from the Western world who came into India, established vast workforces like IBM, HP, they did that, but also Indian companies like Tata, they started business in India and then they extended globally. So it's they know how to do it, and they certainly the Indian companies have the well-being of their staff in India on their priority list.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. So, do you agree organizations need to focus more on enhancing productivity and regaining competitiveness in the market rather than keeping the cost low?
Well, as I said before, the purpose of a company is to grow and to make profits. And how do you make profits? Either you increase the revenue and you decrease the cost. So cost down is a key. I wouldn't say even a conscious decision, but it's so built in all the systems. So you have always to look at better productivity, better cost down, and less waste. And we look at that. The problem is that if you look at your human resources, if your employees, if your project team, they are a system and individuals which are connected somehow. And it is a misconception if you say, okay, if I squeeze out every of the components of the system, every individual human being in my team, if I make them productive and give them less money and everything, then in sum I will have a cost-efficient system. That's not true, because the system is more than just the sum of the parts, and so you have to maybe make people not so effective and productive and cost down at individuals, but you have to look at the whole system, how to do that. And there are some concepts to do that, like the lean concepts, when you say, okay, the whole system should avoid waste, not the individual, but the whole system should avoid. Or we have this concept of flow, so and value change. So there are a lot of management concepts are dealing with the fact, how can we optimize the system to bring out low high profit and good growth. And it's still, we are looking at the economic inherent values of profits and low costs, but on a system base. And that's I think, and I looked into that just recently a little bit more in depth. There are some very good concepts to improve the flow. So we have this theory of constraints of Goldratt, who said identify in the system, identify the bottleneck, and then make sure the bottleneck is being fed. And it's not the target to overload each individual or the whole system with work, because then they have managed the overload. The target is really to just in time load the bottleneck, and then the whole system will be underloaded. And this will be the best performance the system can have. So this is a theory behind it, theory of constraints, Goldratt. I can only, he was an Israeli, and he wrote that theory of constraints book. After coming out of manufacturing just in time, these concepts were fed into that. And from that theory of constraints, he has a second book, which was dealing with critical chain management, which was a application on project management. So how can we schedule projects with this critical chain method, and the results. And I saw some experiments with companies. I knew NCR at this time in the late 90s did an experiment, and it was amazing. So they experienced that the average times of projects was shortened by 1/3 using another scheduling method. The same project, the same environment, whatever, just using another mindset. It's a mindset with that, and another method to do that. The critical chain doesn't have fixed milestones, but you estimate the tasks and you do them in a very concentrated way. You do one task and you avoid multitasking, and you don't allow the student syndrome to the procrastination, that you start later on tasks.
Yeah.
So maybe we do a talk about critical chain management, because it comes back again, through the flow, and
Yeah.
people should be aware of it, because it's a wonderful tool for project managers.
Exactly. I mean, there can be very small things which, if you notice them and fix them, you can improve the productivity easily. Better tools, better devices, better equipments. Yes, again, that all these things will cost money. At the same time, you get to see short term versus long term. Yes, short term it may cost you money, but improvement in the productivity and morale, team morale, and happiness, and all this, and you can get the more work done by having better tools.
More work done for the whole system, for the whole project, organization, whatever, and not for the individual. So it's the same story as, if you sharpen your axe, you will be faster cutting down the trees.
Yeah.
But you have to invest in sharpening the axe.
Exactly. Yes, investing the sharpening as can take some time, but you can get a better result at the same time.
Correct.
Exactly. So yeah, you need to look at the not just narrowness. You have to look at the long-term picture. What else can I do? What system I can add? What tools can I add into so that my team can be more productive? And a lot of things you can do automate nowadays. The automation is happening. So what can I do to automate? Which removing the dependency on certain jobs, which may be dangerous or maybe repetitive work. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So how do project managers handle the pressure from regulators and customers during project delivery?
Yeah, I think there are maybe not so many pressures from regulators, but certainly from customers,
Oh, yeah.
Regulators tend to have a regulation that is maybe changed in a year cycle, but not really regular cycles. While customers, when they are involved in your project and you ask them, you discuss with them, they get more knowledge about what you're doing, and they are coming up with new ideas, with change ideas, or they revisit their requirements. Yeah, so it's a how do you handle that? It's change management. It's and before change management sets in, so before the customer requests you to change something, maybe it's a good idea to engage with customers and to manage their expectations. So expectation management is another tool project manager should employ. And managing expectations is, putting yourself empathetic into the shoes of the customer and say, okay, what really do I think, do I feel, do they need, and is it important what they ask for, or is it other things more important if I look into their business? And sometimes customers don't like that, because they think we are in charge of our development and we know our requirements, and then you have a hard time to convince them what they need. But exactly that's the point, that you establish trust with them and that they listen to you, and you as a project manager not only become the deliverer of the requirements, but you also become a trusted advisor, and you help them through the thought process to develop their requirements and develop their wishes. And then, it's very easy to be successful in the project, but if you don't get into the minds of your customer, don't get their trust, they will surprise you all the time with new ideas and with changes, and then you have a hard time to react to that. Even then, if you are in this state, in this not good state, then you have to understand the change and maybe then you have to deal with the change, and you have to make sure that they understand what the impact of the change would be. Yeah, if they would insist on doing it. Sometimes they can't resist of changing something, but you know, I heard the story. It was on my project, but on a colleague's project. So they, the customer was asking for a change, and then they discussed, and the customer project manager said, you know, I have to do it because my upper management wants me to do that, you know, and so I give you the change request. And although I understand personally, it's maybe not good for the project and for the company and so on. And so he asked the other project manager for a complaint letter of the project manager, of the deliverer, to complain about this change. You know, though that upper management is not directly addressed, but is directly addressed in the manner that it's a complaint that if you change this and that, then that will happen. Because he was not able to convey that to his management, so he used that letter to make sure that we have a major crisis on the customer side. So this is how you can try to handle changes. And yeah, so it's the first thing is, you know, like always in project management, if such a change comes up, don't panic. Don't panic, but really try to understand what it is, how it came to that, and try to influence that.
Yeah, I mean, you got really good points. Have a good change management system, and if the change come, you follow the change control process. Yes, sometimes you have to do it because it's kind of a, you know, regulators are expecting or customers expecting. And I mean, the other important thing is risk management. You should have kind of a good risk handle of the risk. Identify this can be a potential risk. If this happen, regulators, you know, bring in new compliance requirement, what is the process around? And if the customer is asking for changes, what is the process around? How do we mitigate that? How much money should we set aside for handling such requirements? And another point you mentioned about the stakeholder engagement, very important point, because who are your stakeholder? Build relationship with them. Sometimes when you have good relationship, yeah, you know, your counterparts do understand. Yeah, you know, before I put any pressure or ask anything, you know, we are human, and they understand. And that happens when you have a relationship. If you don't have a relationship, they hate you and you hate them, then, you know, you need to build relationship with them, basically. Good relationship, bring the positivity, and you're going to do collectively doing the good job.
You're right.
Yeah. All right. So my next question: whether survival skills can easily be adapted to business skills for project managers dealing with environmental impact of the project?
Yeah, I think, you know, any impact that is just disruptive for the project. In a project, you have a plan, idea what you want to do, and then disruptions come in. They can be environmental, or they can be, as we discussed before, supply chain oriented, or change, a lot of high change frequency of impactful changes. So a lot of disruptions can occur, and the survival skills are, just build some wisdom, be more resilient, you know. And resilience means that you have different options, that you can see different perspectives, and change your mindset. So sometimes you are going this path, and then disruption comes in, and you have to decide quite quickly, without many emotions, that you maybe adapt the path to go another direction slightly, and to react to that. Don't neglect the disruptions that come in. So you always have to have your senses open, your ears and eyes, and look at the environment, what's happening, what could approach our way to disrupt us. And this is a survival skill, you know. It's built in. So if we 10,000 years ago we went through the bush, you know, and then there was a hustle in the bush, and then it could be a tiger or whatever,
Mm.
or a deer we want to hunt. And so we are equipped with reacting to changes in the environment, and we have to look at these survival skills also in projects, and in project management, and in business overall. So, and it's not only environmental impact, and sustainability, as I said before, is not only about environment. It's also about, all of the long-term thinking. If you go 10,000 years ago, if you go through the bush and you were intending to go down there, the way to the mountain to get something. So this was your
Yeah,
target, your long-term target, and it was sustainable, and you're still pursuing it despite you are encountering some disruptions on the way to the mountain.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with survival skills also come with the practice or with the patience
Yeah.
and experience. Yes,
And
sometimes you have to fail to find out. Next time I will be more equipped, better ready, and handle this situation better.
and as you said, survival skills will come through experience, and maybe they cannot be learned in a university or an MBA program or so. You can have the theory about it, but in the end, you have to be the person who is surviving in your life, and then you can transmit this knowledge and the survival skills to your work.
Yeah,
And if you are project manager to your projects.
exactly. I mean, it's sometimes you get by your own experience, but also look at the lesson learned. And you correctly mentioned, let's see if you're going to particular direction, you saw that there's a potential problem and you handle how to handle. And I'm going, hey, Dharam, make sure this is there can be potential problem.
Yeah.
Be ready with that, and you're equipped. You have a
Yeah.
better equipment to deal with the situation.
Yeah, you're right. We also can learn from stories told, and there's a lot of wisdom in stories. So read a lot of books about, let's say, adventurers. How did they survive in unknown territories, and
Yeah,
that books might convey some ideas how to do that. And if you have read it, you know about it, but then it still comes to the application and you have to understand when the situation arises that you apply this kind of skills.
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of material available nowadays, especially with the internet becoming so easy for everyone. Learn from your colleague, learn from from your PMI. When you go to PMI chapters, you get to know from them, and the webinars and podcasts we are doing so far. We have hundreds of webinars and podcasts. So why don't you watch them, learn from them, and everybody come with their own style and experience and learn from them. And like you have some certain experience, you're sharing those experiences. And if somebody watching your how you dealt with in IBM or other situation, get some points from that.
Yeah.
Okay? More you watch, more you read, you becoming better project manager. All right. So, do organizations strive to transport a transparent corporate governance, such as environmental, social, governmental, or in short, ESG?
Do organizations look into that? Yes. Do they exercise this? Some do. In general, I would say they don't have an inherent drive to do it, but there are regulations, laws, moral statements in society who make it attractive for organizations to adapt to these transparent corporate government, but they don't like it because they have their secret strategy, they have their tactics, and they don't want their competition to know about it. But they can be very transparent about what they are doing. It's a competitive thing because it also builds some trust for customers. That if you are showing that you are transparent, so it's some do it to be competitive. Some do it because they are forced. But do they inherently try to be more transparent in their governance? I don't think so.
Yeah, so I think they have to do a little more work, especially when there's their impact on the climate or the environment. So they should take some extra steps to make sure, yes, not only about the profit. Profit is important, but long-term sustainability of the environment, climate, and humanity.
Yeah, that's our wish, but I don't think organizations in their strive to make profits, have really put that as a key target. So it's a as I said, as a guardrail that the society and laws give them, but transparency is also a risk if you are in a competitive environment.
Yeah.
If you are an outstanding leader of an industry, you can be very transparent, and you are, because it also scares your competition and it gives some trust for your customers. But this is a motivation to be transparent, to have a unique selling proposition and to be outstanding. It's not that organizations have any target to make humanity survive or to make the environment safer. I don't think so. I haven't. There are a lot of statements on the websites about that, but the actions are different. Give you an example. If you look at Exxon, which comes out now, and I'm not sure if it is really proven in fact, but Exxon already in the 60s understood that global warming will come with the exploitation of fossil fuel, and they had predictions what would be in 50 years from the 60s, which is now, and they predicted the global warming, and they said, okay, yeah, so we have to fund research and NGOs who are arguing against it, and that's what they did. They said no, it's fossil fuels are good because they were looking primarily at their profits, at their influence, at their power, and not at humanity, not at the environment. So, and I don't think that changed a lot. If you look at the war in Ukraine today, who is profiting from that? They don't care about the environment or humanity. They care about unsustainable profits and keeping the power they have.
Exactly. Yeah, we can only wish for and hope that more and more organizations do take the right step in the right direction. So let's hope for that. And if you are in the position, yeah, do your best to take the right step. And sometimes one person can take, one of your steps can change the whole organization or whole humanity. So do your best. All right. Thank you very much, Thomas. It's again a pleasure talking with you and great discussion, great sharing. So thank you. And I hope to bring, have more discussion with you.
Thanks, Dharam, for setting it up. Even if you travel the world, now in Sydney, last time in Texas. So, and I really hope that our listeners will benefit from our discussions. And if you do, if you think it's interesting, come back to us and continue the discussion, please.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.